Tough decision to leave Boys Ranch.
Sure.
You take the Nissen Osterneck fight, who is a UFC veteran,
Sure.
very respectable loss, but you bounce back, huge win over Eric Davila. Now people are talking about you again as phenom. Great-looking guy, well-spoken, athletic, has such a different background than what you see from a lot of these guys who come from the streets or have had martial arts training growing up. Then you had to make another tough decision with respect to surgeries and taking a step back again to get your body right. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, elbow, shoulder?
Actually, shoulder and elbow, and then
Okay.
I've been getting some other treatments on my elbow, so on my opposite elbow. So yeah, I've done that, and I'm taking that step. I actually knew I was going to have to before. After the Neeson fight, I had 2 more fights. I had the shoulder issues before those fights, so I knew going into it that my shoulder wasn't stable and that my elbows were shaky. But obviously, you know, I was like we talked about, you're getting paychecks, you know, and so you've got to go out there and you know, get to work. So for me to take a step back and do that, I feel like, you know, that was a necessary move to make, because I want to get to that next level like we've talked about. You know, that's where I want to be, and you can't do it with structurally unsound joints, you know. So it was just a matter of fact. The only hindrance for me was a matter of you know, losing time. You know, I'm losing a year, and I'm not getting any younger. So
Talk to me about your health. Where are you at now? Because here we are, December. It's been quite a long stretch for you being out of the fight game. How soon are you going to return to the cage?
yeah, like I would say right now I'm, you know, 95% healthy, and that other 5% is may or may not be there for my next fight, and that's fine with me. All out in the grappling right now, and the jiu-jitsu, and I feel good there. You know, that was a little bit of a fight that first month, trying to regain that strength. You know, when you go from being immobilized in your shoulder and immobilized in your elbow, you atrophy a lot. You know, so I lost a lot of weight, a lot of muscle during the, you know, that post rehab time, and so I'm planning on being back either, you know, sometime in late January and February, ready to rock and roll, and put a string of fights together, and you know, like we said, just keep working towards that next level. You know, each fight should be progressively bigger and bigger.
Take me through the thought process, Kyle, on what weight to walk around at. We talk about that a lot in the media, those of us who cover mixed martial arts and cover boxing for that matter, about the weight cut. And it's obviously very prevalent in your background from wrestling.
Sure.
Trying to be guys who have the thought process of, I want to be as big as possible, yet cut down to make weight, then kind of build back up within that next 24 hours so that you know, you have a size advantage. You've taken a little bit of a different approach, right, in terms of MMA and fighting at 185 pounds.
I really have, and I feel like I've done it with experience from the wrestling background, you know, spending all those years wrestling and making big weight cuts and seeing my performances either, you know, suffer because of big weight cuts. It's as simple as this. When you make a big weight cut, you are and you get down, let's say you lose 20 pounds within you know, 72-hour period. That's adversely going to affect your performance come, may not be first round, but second and third round. You'll see that time and time again with guys after they lose that weight so quickly. They'll have a great first round, which I had plenty of great first periods in wrestling, you know, and then after those weight cuts, man, it really gets to you. And there's nothing, there's no feeling like that lack of power when you go in that second, third round and you have nothing in you. And I just said to myself, I'm not doing that again. So I like to keep my weight within a 3% is kind of what I call it, the day of, 3% fluctuation. So for me, you know, being roughly in that 190, 200 pound range, that's 7 pounds, you know, 6 to 7 pounds that I want to stay within. And I like to keep my window small. So it's if I'm going to make weight at 4 p.m. on a Friday, I'm going to cut that 6 or 7 pounds off between 2 and 4 p.m. And then get my 7 pounds right back on, so that window in which I cut's real small. And I think it's important to have that confidence going into a fight that I'm coming from round 3, I'll be ready to go, you know, and that the weight cut, you know, hasn't done anything to me. I went through the macho rounds with wrestling, you know, and there's a little bit of that part of that. How much weight do I cut is macho, you know, and that comes from inexperience. You know, you go out there and compete, and you get that feeling where I don't have my juice anymore. It's you know, disabling.
Talk to me about weight training. A lot of MMA fighters, you know, those of us who kind of follow The Ultimate Fighter and watching those camps, do you think weight training is kind of making a comeback in terms of athletes realizing that, hey, I can get stronger using weight training without blowing my body up so big that I can't fight in the weight class I want?
Certainly.
How are you approaching weight training?
Yeah, and as a strength and conditioning coach, I feel real qualified to talk about that. I believe that, you know, strength and conditioning can play a good role in a few things. You can take the path of I want to get stronger, you know, through strength and conditioning, and that's great. But for me, number one is I'm doing it to maintain, to be healthy, to be prepared to play. You know, I've got to be out there ready to compete, so I've got to stay balanced in that sense, you know, and make sure that I'm keeping everything strong enough to where I'm not weak in any position and susceptible to, you know, gaining another injury. So that's my main focus with strength and conditioning. And of course, the last part of the conditioning is being ready to go 3 rounds. And that being said, I think there's an important component to that, but there's also an important component to how much grappling are you doing, how much actually stand-up, you know, conditioning are you doing, because that's where you gain the economy, you know what I mean? How easy is this for me to do? I've been doing this, I've been wrestling my whole life, so when I go out there and wrestle, you know, for 2 hours straight, that's not a big deal. I've been doing that, you know, my body's used to that. It's becoming used to standing up, you know, with your hands up for 25 minutes, you know, 5-5-minute rounds, and being able to protect yourself, and also being effective in that manner. So I do believe strength conditioning is coming back within the sport of MMA, but I also think it's not the sole purpose for your conditioning, if that makes sense.
You mentioned being able to stand up and trade for 5 rounds. Those of us who got to see George St. Pierre, who arguably pound for pound best fighter in the world of cage fighting, put on a boxing clinic against Josh Koscheck in his title defense this past Saturday. Do you think guys who come from a wrestling background, a jiu-jitsu background, are starting to appreciate boxing more in terms of its importance in terms of being a well-rounded fighter?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, it's fun. I mean, go in there, and when I strike, I have fun doing it, and I enjoy it. Now, that being said, I understand a little bit of mastery and excellence, and I know when I've mastered something like wrestling, you know, and you feel that confidence in it, it takes a few years to develop that with the boxing and striking. And St. Pierre actually has gone back to his wrestling roots for most of his fights, and you can actually, I can remember him before this last fight talking about how he was going to exploit Koscheck's weaknesses, you know, and he didn't mention what those weaknesses were, but
Game plan,
obviously for 5 rounds we saw, you know, where he wanted to take that fight, and so I think that's real important for me right now. Do I feel like I've mastered that striking component yet? No. So I want to make sure that, you know, if I'm going to get in an octagon, I'm going to be able to apply, you know, my strengths in that fight. And so as I train, I keep that ultimate prize down the road in mind, you know, those title fights where I'm training to be that, you know, completely qualified striker, but I don't think it's in my best interest to go out there and trade, you know, to, you know, display skills that may or may not win. You know what I mean?
What's the long-term objective after fighting is over? You mentioned that you're not 22 years old anymore.
Sure.
When fighting is done for you, what's next? You go back to coaching? Do you open a gym like we're seeing a lot of guys do? Private training, which you do a lot of? What's the big picture for Kyle after achieving greatness in the cage?
Yeah, and those are all questions that go through my head. And as I get older, I'm starting to learn that you can't think too far ahead, and it's funny how opportunities will come, you know, present themselves. So as I go, you know, I'm putting things in place. Would I be interested in coaching at the MMA level, you know, at that professional MMA level? Yeah, I'd love it. That's why I chose to do it. That was my livelihood. And after you get done, you know, I would enjoy getting to follow someone else's path and bring them up through those ranks. So that would be a route I'd like to take. I think at that level, you know, I think that's where I'm right now. I'm getting the most joy is at that elite level where it's full commitment. So if I was to, you know, picture myself, you know, after my career was over with, it'd be, you know, alongside an up-and-coming fighter, trying to bring them through, because I enjoy that. I enjoy getting to serve as their support point, you know, from my own experiences and bring them along. So that would be something I would, you know, definitely see myself doing after my fighting career is over with.
You mentioned being from Illinois. Bears fan?
You bet. You bet, man. And I had to tuck my tail on Sunday, but I'm definitely a big Bears fan and a bigger Walter Payton fan. Getting to read on him as a kid, you know, kind of, you know, it's fun to have those models and those idols you kind of drive towards and see what they did and kind of that mentality, and then try and adopt that and apply that to your own professional careers. You know, that's important. You hold those things dear to you. You know, that's what you're made of.
Kyle, you've been a wonderful guest. We appreciate your time and appreciate what you bring to the cage. Those of us who've been able to follow your career
I appreciate it.
have thoroughly enjoyed what you've done and can't wait to see what the future holds.
Appreciate it, Warren. Thanks for having me.